Thanos is one of the most controversial villains in cinema history. Some people call him a monster, some call him a genius, and surprisingly, some even call him right. He wiped out half of all life in the universe with a single snap. And the scariest part? He didn't see himself as evil. He believed he was saving everything. But the real question is not what he did, it's why he believed it was necessary. And the answer might be far more complex than anyone expected. A villain with a purpose. In the original comics, Thanos is simple. He is obsessed with death and power. But in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, things changed. Writers gave him something different. A belief system. A mission. A logic that sounds disturbing but not completely random. Thanos is not just a destroyer. He is a problem solver, at least in his own mind. He looks at the universe and sees something broken. Too many lives. Too few resources. Too much suffering. And instead of asking how to fix it, he asks how to reset it. The idea that started everything. Thanos comes from Titan, a once great civilization. But it collapsed, not because of war, not because of corruption, but because of overpopulation and resource collapse. At least, that is what he believes. He offered a solution. Remove half the population, let the rest live in balance. But his people rejected him. They called him insane. And his planet died anyway. That moment becomes the foundation of everything he does later. Because in his mind, he wasn't wrong, he was just too early. Trauma that shaped his worldview. Thanos does not grow up in peace. He grows up watching failure repeat itself. Civilizations expanding too fast, resources collapsing too soon, planets dying slowly while no one acts. And every time he suggests his solution, he is ignored. This creates something dangerous in him. Not just anger, but certainty. Because when someone believes they are the only one who understands a problem, they stop asking permission to solve it. His simple but terrifying logic. Thanos' argument is easy to understand. If the universe keeps growing without limits, it will eventually collapse. So his solution is simple. Reduce demand. Balance supply. Save everything else. In his eyes, it is not cruelty. It is mathematics. A universe where everyone survives is better than a universe where everyone suffers. Even if half must disappear. That is the core of his philosophy. And that is what makes him so dangerous. Because logic without empathy becomes something terrifying. Why people actually agreed with him. Surprisingly, many viewers understood his argument. Not because they supported genocide, but because the idea sounds structured, controlled, almost scientific. In a world where overpopulation, pollution, and resource issues exist, his logic feels like a twisted solution to a real problem. That is what makes Thanos different from typical villains. He doesn't feel random, he feels calculated. And that makes people uncomfortable. Because understanding a villain is the first step to fearing him differently. The real question, was he wrong? If we ignore morality for a moment and look only at outcome, Thanos' snap does change things. For a short time, resources become more available. Nature begins to recover. Pollution drops. Wildlife returns. But this effect is temporary, because population growth naturally fills the gap again. In reality, his solution does not fix the system, it only pauses it. And that raises an important truth: you cannot solve complex systems with simple cuts. The real problem he missed. Thanos believes the problem is too many people, but many real-world thinkers argue the issue is not population, but consumption. Some people consume far more resources than others. Technology, energy use, and inequality play a much bigger role than numbers alone. So his solution is not balanced. It is blunt. And that is where his logic starts to fall apart. Because instead of fixing the system, he destroys part of it. Why he never changed his mind. Even after seeing resistance from heroes, Thanos never doubts himself. Why? Because in his experience, he has already seen what happens when nothing is done. Entire worlds collapse, civilizations disappear, And no one survives long enough to say we should have acted earlier. So in his mind, doing nothing is worse than doing something extreme, even if that something is horrifying. The Infinity Stones ASA final tool. When Thanos finds the Infinity Stones, he sees the perfect solution: power beyond imagination. Not just to influence the universe, but to rewrite it. Instantly. Efficiently. Without debate. Without delay. To him, this is not destruction. It is correction, a reset button for a broken system. And that is why he believes so strongly in his mission. Because now he has the power to enforce what he always believed was necessary. Why he never sees himself as a monster. One of the most important parts of Thanos' character is this: he never enjoys suffering. He does not act out of rage or pleasure. He acts out of belief. In his mind, he is making the hardest possible choice for the greatest possible good. That is why he calls it sacrifice, not murder. And that is what separates him from typical villains. He believes pain is justified if it leads to balance. The hero complex inside a villain. Thanos is not trying to conquer the universe. He is trying to fix it. That creates a strange psychological contradiction. He sees himself as a savior, while everyone else sees him as destruction. And that tension is what makes him so memorable. Because from his perspective, he is not the villain of the story. He is the only one willing to do what must be done. The snap that changed everything. When the snap finally happens, half of all life disappears instantly. No warning, no pain, just silence. For Thanos, this is not victory in a traditional sense. It is completion, a job finished, a balance restored. But what he doesn't account for is the emotional weight of what he has done, because numbers are not the same as lives, and balance is not the same as peace. Why heroes could never accept him. The Avengers do not fight Thanos because they disagree with his math. They fight him because they reject his philosophy. They believe life cannot be measured in percentages, that survival is not something to be optimized through sacrifice, and that no one has the right to decide who disappears. This creates a fundamental conflict: efficiency versus morality, logic versus humanity. Thanos is not simple. He is not purely evil. He is not purely right. He is something far more uncomfortable. A character who believes his actions are necessary, even when they are devastating. And that is why he remains one of the most fascinating villains ever created. Because the real fear is not that he is wrong. It is that from his point of view, he makes sense. If this recap changed how you see Thanos, share your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe for more deep movie explanations that uncover the hidden meaning behind the biggest characters in cinema.